A Northern California teen committed suicide last September after she was allegedly raped by 3 16-year-old boys and then bullied as a result of the rape. Now, this story seems very, very familiar because we've seen it happen again and again. Recently, Rehtaeh Parsons from Canada committed suicide after she was allegedly raped and she was bullied as a result. And of course, there was the case of the 16-year-old girl in Steubenville, Ohio. You know, she did not commit suicide, but she faced severe bullying as a result of her rape. So this is happening again and again, and the question is, what are we going to do to stop this kind of horrible behavior from these teenagers?
So it leads to a number of questions and comments. First of all, there must be something we're missing in the younger culture. Now, look, it's 2 cases where they committed suicide, etc., but combined with Steubenville and the rape and the sharing, etc., I know part of it is that they now have smartphones, so obviously it's easier to share the pictures, and kids being the idiots that they are. And kids are vicious creatures. That's part of this story, and they've always have been. That's nothing new, right? The teasing, the bullying, all that has always existed, and might have even been worse in the past. But there's something new that I'm seeing where with the whole thing about the rape, and then it's like such a cool thing that you'd want to share it with everybody. I don't think that rape was cool before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It wasn't that long ago that I was in high school, and if someone had been raped, if one of our peers had been raped, it would be a serious matter. People would take it seriously. They would treat her, or they would treat her as a victim. They wouldn't treat her as a slut and bully her. I don't know where this culture comes from, but obviously it's something that really needs to be addressed. Let me give you guys a few more details on the most recent story. So this 15-year-old was Audrie-Pott. Usually we don't reveal the name of the victim, but in this case the parents want everyone to know who the victim was. And she went to a party. It was a house party, and she got drunk and was allegedly unconscious. That's when 3 different boys allegedly raped her, and then they took photos of the assault. The photo went viral. The majority of people in her school saw them, and that's the reason why they started bullying her.
Now, I think there must be, before the stories broke, before they committed suicide, I have to assume that there was some sort of controversy as to whether it was consensual or not. Because I can't imagine they're like, haha, we raped her, and look at all these cool pictures of the rape that we took. They must be saying to at least to their friends and the people they're passing it around to, she wanted it, she got drunk, etc. Now, whether they slipped her something, and all that is in dispute in a trial, and in this case, at least, they've been arrested, and so we're going to find out in a trial, or at least some of the evidence is going to be aired out. But even if you think that it was consensual and you think you didn't slip her or anything, and she just passed out from drinking too much on her own, it's still it was never cool to then take pictures of you having sex with her and then send it around. Yeah. Again, I'm saying that's something slightly different, and of course it's not cool everywhere, and of course when people find out they're outraged, etc., etc. But I'm talking about something that's happening underneath the surface that apparently is that we're not getting, because it's happening too often for it not to be something.
I mean, look, it brings up double standards, especially when it comes to, young girls having sex as opposed to young boys having sex. Young boys will have the sex, and of course they get applauded for it.
They literally pass the pictures around.
They literally pass the pictures around. When it comes to young girls, well, you're a slut, you wanted it, and I do think that there is a debate among the teenagers as to whether or not she wanted it. But even, first of all, that debate shouldn't even be happening. Right. You should allow investigators to actually take a look, professionals to take a look to see what actually happened. And even in the case where she did want it, slut-shaming is never okay, and we got to change that culture as well.
But you touched on something there, is that for the boys it's fame, and for the girls it's shame, and they're the same age. They're in the class together. Everything it ought to be identical. And it also gets into the problem that I don't know how you feel. I'm going to guess at how you feel, but we now have these rules that are starting to develop that potentially have gotten some other boys in trouble for, like, when is it okay to have sex with someone? Like, if they're drunk, and what level of drunk can they be? And if they consent but they're kind of drunk, then you can still get charged. And you and I have been like, come on, like the scene in Girls, and we had a rape debate about that. But then you read stories like this, and not so much for leave the suicide out, which obviously makes it just an unbelievable tragedy, but just the notion of the way kids talk to each other and the fact that it would appear, unless these boys are evil, and maybe they are, but there's also some possibility that they don't get the passed out part. That they think, whatever, or maybe she mumbled yes in her incoherence, right? And so they don't get it. And now we got no choice but to make these ironclad rules, which seem sort of unfortunate and silly. But if you're anywhere close to unable to think clearly, then we gotta say to these kids, no, then you literally can't do it, or somebody might charge you with rape. Yeah. And my position now will have turned around completely, because ultimately we gotta protect these people.
Yeah, I actually agree with Ben. I think that, people maybe were getting too carried away. Well, like, she had 2 drinks, is that consent? And my old position would have been, of course it's consent. People have been having 2 drinks, etc. And I'm not saying that 2 drinks is rape now. Don't get me wrong. But we got to move the line, because apparently they don't get it.
They don't get it.
They don't, like, right. We got to move it closer to, like, before. I mean, how dumb are you?
I
feel like she's unconscious.
Yeah, unconscious is definite. That's a clear line.
But we all agree on unconscious.
Of course we all agree on that.
But I'm saying you got to move it past unconscious, because the kids aren't getting it.
What if she's like...
I think the kids get it. I just think that they don't care. I think that they're under the assumption that they're not going to face any consequences of it. And it's because of the way that we've trivialized rape in the country. Let's keep it real. We have politicians saying ridiculous things about rape and what's considered rape, what isn't considered rape.
I don't think that's it. And I'm going to say something even more controversial. I think it's part of the video game culture. I'm not blaming it on video games. Everybody calm down, okay? But part of the culture there, everybody's raping everybody. Oh, I raped that kid. Oh, yeah, ha ha. Oh, yeah, that was rape. And it gets thrown around all the time. All the time, and we've talked about that on the show before. And is that partly leading to
using the term rape? Not
using the term rape, right? Right, meaning like I destroyed him, I kicked his ass, etc. Right? Is that leading subconsciously for a small percentage of people in the country who are young and impressionable to think that the word rape is cool, and so then they're making the enormous mistake
I think
to actually go over and be like, oh, hey, bragging about it, like, oh man, she was unconscious, yeah, I raped her.
Yeah,
I think it has more to do with a double standard than anything else, Cenk, about how these are teenage boys and their hormones are raging, and it's all about getting rewarded because of the number of women or girls you sleep with. You know what I mean? Which is why they show it off. Which is why they take the pictures. Like, look at this naked girl. Look at what we did to her.
So that's always been true. And the smartphones are now meaning, and that's why we say on the show a million times, never let a guy take a picture of you naked. He's gonna show it to everyone he knows. Because if you're a 15-year-old boy, the number one thing you want to do is brag. But it's one thing to brag about, hey, this girl showed me her breasts. It's another thing to brag about, hey, she was unconscious and I raped her. So now, look, the one last thing on this.
And I would argue that there's some chance that they think, no, I'm unconscious and I had sex with her. Doesn't make them any less criminally culpable, but they think, because she mumbled, or she, again, interestingly, or she didn't say no.
Right. Or we were making out before she passed out.
Right.
They'll have excuse like that and they'll want to notch it as a victory rather than a rape. I hear you on that. Now, last thing is, look, everybody's now outraged after the 2 girls committed suicide and everybody's talking about it, right? Can we get outraged before they commit suicide, when they're getting viciously bullied? Why isn't everybody up in arms about that?
Well, then here's the thing, and here's one of the problems that we're going to encounter, is that this requires, doesn't involve, starting at what, 12 or 13? Enormously frank conversations, not at home, but in school, about sex, about what sex is, and frank talks with kids and talks in front, and they're gonna, who's gonna have to be in those rooms? The girls too. 13, 14-year-old girls, you're gonna have to talk about sex. You're gonna have to do it because your classmates are gonna do it, because this pressure is there and the schools are abdicating their responsibility if we don't have those conversations.
I think that's the best point that's been made so far, because one thing that we've definitely been doing in recent years is we've been trying to, shy away from talking about sex in a very frank way with young people, right? We've been defunding comprehensive sex ed. We don't talk about the touchy topics, and we freak out anytime anyone mentions sex. We have to get away from the religious notion that talking about sex is going to make teenagers do crazy things. You got to tell them what the reality is. That way they can protect themselves and avoid doing risky behavior.
And
like that.